we've been observing classrooms from pre-K all the way up through 5th grade in the Edgecombe County schools, I was particularly amazed at seeing how self-confidence issues changed from the pre-K through 2nd grade, where all the children were just look at me and coming up as soon as we came into classrooms and wanting to be a part of everything, to by the time when, especially by the 4th and 5th grade, they would look and say, who's coming in our classroom now? And,
Right.
and there was a closed feeling, and it was more, don't look at me. And that's where I started seeing some children who didn't want to be engaged in the lesson work, who didn't look like they were as confident.
Yeah, and I think a part of that goes with, cognitive development as well, but it also deals with instructional strategies where the work in 4th and 5th grade starts to be more independent and reading based, and kids also start to be more individualized. So yeah, I agree.
I think that it's really important that we have that foundation for our kids. Language and literacy is key to being able to keep those kids in 3rd and 4th and 5th grade engaged.
Okay, along those lines of self-concept being linked to the cognitive development, I would say that's where the role of the administrator really comes in, though, making sure that the instruction in the classroom is developmentally appropriate and not simply just age-based in their 3rd grade, so this is what they should be doing. Is each child's developmental needs getting met cognitively, developmentally, across all of the domains.
Mm-hmm. And Billy, I know you also looked at the physical development.
Mm-hmm.
Were you seeing that physical development needs were being met in the classrooms?
In the early elementary, I definitely was. There seemed to be a lot more movement within the room, specifically with the station teaching or the stations that they use at the early elementary level. You know, the kids have 15 or 20 minutes at a station, and then they're moving on to something new. It seemed to be fit right in line with the research that we've done with yardsticks and other things related to child development. Along the lines of physical development, though, it's amazing how much a year makes a difference in early childhood. I look at Mark Millennium now, and the kids that were in kindergarten who weren't any taller than this table just a few months ago are now, way up here. And
Wow.
So just the vast changes and development at the early age.
Wow.
I think it's really important that the principals know that too, like you were saying. Because when they go into a classroom and they are all the same age, but they're all at different developmental levels, you should be able to see different things happening in your classroom for those different
The
kids.
differentiation of levels.
So that it's not all just the same, because they're all expected to be here, that those teachers and those principals know that there should be a variety of activities to meet all of their needs.
Yeah.
And when, at the elementary level, when there are any behavioral problems, the administrator really has to keep in mind, why is this child misbehaving? Is it, just as you said, Julie, because they can't handle, they can't read. They feel like they cannot achieve what they're expected to do at the level that they're expected to do, and so then they just turn around and start acting out.
Right. Which I think will be one of the largest growth areas for me. Yeah, if I work in elementary, is because in the high school level, we have this predetermined scriptive matrix of where they are because they are cognitively more advanced, and so we can say in the high school level, you know better, but it's not the case in elementary. And one of the things that stood out to me was the pre-conventional awareness some of them have between right and wrong. So, for example, in 3rd grade, they may know it's wrong to steal something, but they may not understand yet the implications of stealing. What it does to your relationship with your peer. It takes away trust. So they're not at the point where they understand that component. And so the moral implications sometimes are not as imperative in high school. And so, that's something to keep in mind when you handle discipline for a student. Whereas those of us that have worked with high school, you know better. And so we're going to prescribe a certain level of discipline. And so that's going to I think, create for any of us that work in elementary that haven't. That's gonna be a new environment of trying to be very creative and almost having to be differentiating discipline and how you deal with management, because the same age kid might be at a different cognitive level, so the response to a disciplinary infraction has to be different.
And coming from working in an elementary school for so long, I assumed that I knew what was appropriate developmentally for most of the kids, and I was really surprised at just how different it is from one grade to the next,
Yeah.
and just what a wide variety of things kids should be doing or could be doing at different ages.
Yeah.
So even just assuming that I knew was really shocking to me that it wasn't really close.
Yeah.
And misconception that I think I have had also as a high school teacher, I have just always thought that the kindergarten teachers, the pre-K teachers, the first grade teachers need to be the most nurturing teachers. And they typically, when we meet them, they are incredibly nurturing. But after reading about their self-concept and how vulnerable they are, I realize how important it is that the teachers remain and are especially sensitive to the child's needs and continue to be super nurturing at that very sensitive age of those middle years. An environment, certainly when we walk into, in every classroom that I've walked into observing, you feel that safety, you feel security, but you have to look at it from that child's perspective. A secure environment for that child in the middle years has to be a place where they feel like, if I answer a question and it's incorrect, I need to be able to feel like that attention is immediately moved away from me, or that teacher's going to bail me out and help me answer it correctly. I don't think we have that issue in high school. You can say no and move on to the next person, but they especially need that nurturing, and they need to feel like they've succeeded on that question before moving on to the next one.
Mm-hmm.
And that was an eye-opener with the interview that I did with the Learning World.
Yeah.
So along those lines, my focus was developmentally appropriate instruction, and what does that look like? But based on what you're saying there, Carolyn, I'd like to think more then of developmentally appropriate cultures established in our room, where that's not just a cognitive deal, where we can come in and see the kids moving or they spending too much time seated, but really making sure it's a safe zone emotionally and socially. So making sure all of the domains of child development are addressed within the classrooms and throughout our schools. And with that, I think research would show that academic performance improves, school attendance improves, as well as the behavior issues that you
Yes,
mentioned
definitely.
earlier.
Yeah. And I think it highlights the great challenge that elementary teachers and administrators have in meeting so many different needs and being so flexible, and how that, it is challenging in the middle grades and the high school, but it's especially challenging in pre-K and in the elementary grades.
Because those are the years that they're being formed,
Yeah.
and that's what we end up with in high
Right,
school. So
sure.
if it's done right in those early years, we will get a stronger, more confident child
Right.
in the later years.
Right. So, yeah, I think I speak for all of us when I say the project and going into these elementary schools was an eye-opening experience, even for someone who's worked in elementary, to look at the literature and then kind of pair that with the site visits. It really was an experience, a growth experience, I think, for
Yes.
all of us.
Indeed.